paid a little bit extra here and there, but it just hasn't been my biggest priority to pay it down aggressively. And my thinking on it has kind of changed. So I want to talk about why. Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm so excited today to talk about my car loan. Excited might be a strong word, but we're going to talk about it. And I want to talk about why I'm really working hard to aggressively pay down this debt in the next few months. Because previously, I didn't really care about this car loan. I wasn't trying super hard to pay it down really quickly, and my thinking on it has kind of changed. And so I want to talk about why that is and how I'm tackling it. What is the story with the car? For a lot of the last several years, I actually didn't own a car. I lived in New York for the last several years. And when you're in New York City, you definitely don't need a vehicle. So when I moved there in 2018, I sold my car before I left. Never owned a vehicle for my whole time in New York. It's a super easy place to live without a vehicle. It's actually probably more of a hassle to own a car. So I just never did. There was never any reason to, and it was always so easy to get around. And I actually loved a car-free lifestyle. I will say it does get a little bit tiring with time when you have a big dog that's hard to take on the subway or in an Uber. So that definitely loses its luster after a while. But we made it work. It's fine. So when I left New York and I came back to Canada, I was pretty sure that I would be buying a car at some point. You definitely don't need one in Toronto. You can get by without a vehicle, but I'd still say it's a much harder city than New York to live without a car. You can do it, especially if you're living in the downtown core, and I am not, but you definitely can make it work. I just knew that given my lifestyle, given the big dog problem, I was kind of tired of calling Ubers with a 60-pound dog. I was just over it. And then the fact that Toronto is just not as accessible a city by public transit. I knew that I would want a vehicle at some point. Now I knew that this car was going to be used, very used, extreme secondhand for a few reasons. One, I just knew I could not afford a new car. I also don't really care about cars. It's not important to me to have a new car. I've never owned a brand new vehicle. It's just not something that I care about at all. I will happily drive a 15-year-old beater, whatever. After not owning a vehicle for 5 years, owning any car feels really exciting. It feels like a treat. So I was just feeling super spoiled to have my own set of wheels again. Incredible. So I knew it was going to be used. It was going to have to be used because my finances were just, one, because I didn't care about cars and it just wasn't important to me to get a new vehicle. But two, from a financial perspective, it just didn't make sense. I spent the last 5 months of my time in New York. I spent my last several months in New York unemployed. And I was traveling back and forth from Canada to the US during that time. It's a complicated, long story. Had a lot of personal things going on at the time. So I was no longer working, but I still had my rent to pay in New York. I still had all my expenses in the US. And as we know, New York is not a cheap place to live. So floating all of those costs while unemployed was pretty exorbitant for the few months I did it. And then I came back to Canada with no job lined up. So all said and done, I spent about 5 months of 2022 unemployed. So when I got back home to Canada, I just was not in a financial place to be buying a new car or even a newish car. I was 2018, 2019, that's way too bougie for me. Let's go to circa 2012. That's about where we're looking. That was my ballpark, especially because you probably all know what the used car market was in the pandemic. It's been an absolute nightmare, and I think it was finally starting to like cool off a little when I started looking at cars, but it's still like, it makes me upset just thinking about it now, like how much I paid for a 10-year-old car. It's just like, it's frankly very upsetting. I actually held off on buying a car for some time when I first got back to Canada. Like I said, you can get by without it. And I was living with family for a little while, so I had access to a vehicle, just didn't have my own vehicle. And I used TTC and Go, which are like some of our public transit, to get around for like those first few months, and it was totally fine. But like I said, I knew eventually at some point I would want to have a vehicle of my own. And so in early 2023, I started to go car shopping. This is after I'd gotten my finances like in a little bit of a better place, but I still didn't have like massive savings, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to buy a car outright. If it had been like pre-pandemic, I may have been able to. I probably could have found a reasonable car for like $6,000 or $7,000 that was like safe, you know, certified. Like, I wasn't looking for anything fancy, but I did need to make sure that it was like relatively safe to drive and wasn't going to just like break in a month. And pre-pandemic, yeah, you probably could have found that for like $6,000 or $7,000. That is just not the reality anymore. At least not in Canada. I don't know what the situation is actually with buying in the US. I know that things have gotten really expensive there too, but it may be a bit more affordable. But instead of paying $6,000 or $7,000, like, I knew it was going to be like double that. And I just did not have $10,000+ to put towards a new vehicle, given like how rough my finances had been because of being unemployed, moving back from New York, and all of those things. So I went into it knowing that I would put down like a reasonable down payment and then finance the rest. So that's exactly what I ended up doing. I think I put down a $5,000 down payment, and then the balance was about $9,000. That was all in. That was for like, that included taxes, registration, getting license plates, like all of that stuff was included. It was about $8,900 was the balance. So that is what I took the loan out for, was $8,900. And this was in April 2020. When was this? That was in April 2023. Oh, I'll also say it was a 3-year loan. I knew I didn't want to have a car loan for like a really prolonged period of time. And also, like, I don't think they give you long car loans on super used cars. Like, I don't think they let you take like a 5 or 7 year loan on like a used car, because it's already so depreciated. Like, my car is 10 years old. Like, they're not going to give me like a 7-year loan on that. So it was all good because I only wanted a 2 or 3 year loan anyway. This was not something I wanted hanging over my head for a long time. So I was super happy with the 3-year loan. I knew I was going to pay it off quicker than that. But to be honest, this car loan just like hasn't been top of mind for me. I am normally quite debt averse. I really don't like having debt. It is the kind of thing where like it stresses me out. It makes me anxious. So I've been a little bit surprised actually at how much I like don't really care about having this car loan. And we're about 8-9 months into the life of the loan now. And it's been fine. And I've paid a little bit extra here and there, but it just hasn't been my biggest priority to pay it down aggressively. That being said, in 2024, I'm coming at it a little differently. I am looking to pay it down aggressively and get it done and paid off once and for all. And so I want to talk about why. I want to talk about what my change of heart has been, like why I've decided to get rid of this debt when initially it just like wasn't the biggest priority. Reason number 1, I have a 9.99 interest rate on this car. I have a 9.99 interest rate on this loan. What? It's so high. And it's frustrating because I have great credit. It's just that I bought in 2023 after interest rates had been hiked many, many times over. So interest rates generally across the board for everything were much higher. It's also a very used car, and interest rates on used cars tend to be higher than interest rates on new vehicles. That's just the way it is. It is what it is. And so even though I had good credit, I was like, but it kind of took me back. I was like, 10%? 10? Okay. And I probably could have shopped around a little bit and maybe found like 8.5% or something. But at the time I was buying the car, I was kind of in a rush to get the vehicle. I wasn't in a rush leading up to it. I had been in Canada for about 8 months. But when I found the car I wanted, I was in a hurry to just buy the car, get insurance, like get it done deal. And so I didn't really shop around, but I also knew I was going to pay the loan off early. So it just didn't feel that important to me. Like I knew I was not going to have this for the full 3-year term. So it just didn't really seem like the biggest priority to go like shop around and along the process unnecessarily. So whatever, I took my 9.99% interest rate. And it's not terrible because the size of my loan wasn't huge. It was only $8,900 to start. And now it's actually at about $5,300. So you're like, okay, that's not that bad. Like a $5,000 car loan. The thing is at 10%, it's still pretty bad. Like it is costing me $1.50 in interest every day just to have this loan. It's costing me like $45-50 a month to have this loan. That's so much money to be paying in interest. Yeah, it's too much money to be paying in interest. So I'm trying to take a more mathematical approach to this and just be like, girly, it doesn't make sense to be investing that money right now. It doesn't make sense to be putting it in savings. Nothing is going to beat a 10% return, which is like what paying off a 10% debt is a 10% return guaranteed. So I've been thinking about this much more like emotionally, just being like, the debt doesn't really bother me. Who cares? Yada, yada, yada. But like at the end of the day, the math, she does not lie. And the mathematical thing to do here is to pay off this 10% loan. So that's reason number 1. Number 2. I have a 3-month emergency fund again. So like I was saying, when I got back from New York, my finances were in a little bit of disarray. I hadn't been working for quite some time. I have been slowly, crawling out of that for the last year and a half, trying to get my finances in a better place. And part of that was just replenishing the savings that I had depleted when I was unemployed. So working my way back up to having a few months of expenses in the bank. And I'm so lucky and grateful that I'm back in a place where that's the case. I have prioritized my emergency fund in the last few months, and I'm now in a place where I have those few months again. So just having that is like a little bit of a weight off. It's that comfort that I needed to feel okay about putting money towards debt again. Like when I didn't have much of an emergency fund, like I knew putting money towards my debt was risky. Like I work in a field where layoffs are quite common. I have looked around and seen so many of my peers and just some of my good friends in my personal life get laid off in the last year and a half. It's really been devastating. And so that's something I always have to think about is like job security, and the reality that I might need my emergency fund at a given point is like pretty high, I'd say. So for me, like paying down that debt when I didn't have cash in the bank was just too scary. And it's still a little bit scary, to be honest. It's not like I suddenly have job security, but at least I have a little bit more money in the bank now, so I can feel a little bit more okay and a bit more secure about putting that money towards debt instead of just saving it. Reason number 3. So it will save me $264 a month when this debt is paid off That's amazing. So that's what my car payment is right now. It's $132 bi-weekly. So most months it's $264. There's those couple months where the payment hits 3 times. We're not going to talk about that. For the sake of this, my car payment is $264 a month. So, which isn't astronomical, by the way. It's pretty reasonable, and it's not like it's a huge drain on my monthly like finances. But still, getting rid of like a $264 expense every month is huge. Like, that's so liberating. It frees up so much more money every month. It frees up money that I can put towards my retirement, towards savings, toward my vacation fund, towards spoiling my dog, like whatever it might be. That's $264 that are now freed up. So honestly, just like for freeing up the cash flow, it's kind of nice. Like the idea of just like paying this debt off and having it gone so that I get a little bit more money in my pocket every month feels like a really nice feeling. So that's like also appealing. So that's reason number 3. Number 4, it is one less thing to keep track of. I think I'm going to talk about this more in other videos, but my finances have gotten extremely complicated, primarily as a result of living overseas. So I've lived in multiple different countries, and most recently I was obviously living in the US, which means I have US bank accounts, US credit cards, I have an IRA, and then I have all these Canadian accounts and Canadian credit cards and a USD account there's so many things going on, and 2024, I'm really working towards simplicity. In all things, I want to simplify my life. I want to declutter and organize my physical space. I want to make sure I'm prioritizing the relationships that are most important to me. I want to simplify my finances. I want to simplify just like everything. And so having one less monthly payment and one less outstanding loan, it's just like one less thing to keep track of. It's one less thing to think about. It's just gone. Just having it just checked off and completely off the table is a relief. Like any little bit to simplify helps. You know what I mean? Because it's just like TD auto finance. We're done here. And that will be a great feeling. For the sake of simplicity, I'm actually like getting kind of on board with just paying this loan off and just getting it out of my life forever. And then reason number 5, driving a fully paid off car is like such a flex in the era of like $500, $700,000 car payments. Driving a paid off car, like look at me. Look at me. It's such a flex. It's just gonna feel incredible to not have any kind of monthly payment. The monthly cost of transportation is gonna be like $200. It's gonna be like insurance and then a little bit of gas. So affordable. Such a dream driving a paid off car. And I am going to drive this thing into the ground. So yeah, that's just like the next few years of like not having this on my plate. And that just feels like amazing. And yeah, what a flex to be able to just have no car note. I'm here for it. So those are the 5 reasons that I've kind of been having a change of heart, and I'm really looking to pay down this car aggressively. And actually, I'm trying to pay it off in 1 year instead of 3. That's kind of my stretch goal, is to pay it off by May 2024. That might be a little too ambitious. It's definitely going to be gone by this summer. So summer 2024 is like my more realistic goal. But if I really push and put like redirect money from other goals just towards paying off this car loan, I think I could do it by May. But it might be tight, so we'll see. But I think that would be really cool to pay off my 3-year loan in 1 year. Just round it out, make it a nice, even number, and just get this out of my life sooner. Like, just get it done. Tell me about it. Do you have a car loan? Are you paying it down aggressively? Is it debt that you're kind of just like, about? I would love to hear all about it, or other debt that you are trying to pay off. So let me know in the comments what you are up to, and I will see you in the next one.